resources be expanding since we're obviously using them? This is because resources are a human creation. What is and what is not a resource is determined by human technology. Oil was not a resource until Colonel Drake invented the drilling rig. Before that, we were limited to whale oil. Okay, and we got petroleum oil, and then we've been able to drill ever deeper and in off the ocean and here. Okay, nuclear power was not a resource until we invented nuclear power. It was just this odd rock. Okay, aluminum was not, people didn't even know about the existence of aluminum until about 1810. Okay, before that they called it rock or dirt. Okay, it's the second most important metal used in our civilization today. It was completely unknown until we developed the technology for separating aluminum from aluminum oxides. Okay, so once again, this is the fallacy. Now, environmentalism today is mostly favored on the left, but this was not always so. These people that I showed you earlier, like Henry Fairfield Osborn, were people of the right, of the radical right. The Harrimans and evicting people from their upstate park, and, what beautiful country this would be if not for all these ugly little shacks. I should, by the way, mention that these were the founders of the environmentalist movement. The Save the Redwoods League was created by Madison Grant and Henry Fairfield Osborn. In fact, if you go to the Redwood Forest today, there is a plaque to the two of them there. Okay. But with the DDT campaign, the color started changing from this, this aristocratic looking down on all these common people running around doing stuff to left-wing anti-capitalism. And in fact, they portrayed the DDT campaign as against the bad insecticide companies who are trying to make money selling this horrible DDT. In fact, the insecticide companies wanted DDT banned because it was outside of patent protection. But be that as it may, with the DDT campaign, it started developing a kind of a left-wing persona, which was then greatly enhanced circa 1970, both the Ehrlich, this population bomb, the zero population growth movement, and especially Earth Day, which became this huge extravaganza. It was funded by Hugh Moore, by the way, of the campaign to stop the population explosion. And at this point, the leaders of many of the left-wing organizations saw that this, the Vietnam War thing was getting stale. The future was with environmentalism. That's where you're going to get recruits. That was the thing that was turning on young radicals. And so they went that way. So, and in the book, by the way, I quote numerous spokesmen of the left, going all the way back, by the way, to Friedrich Engels, who wrote a terrific refutation of Malthus in 1844. It still stands scrutiny today. Henry George, and then the left's 1970s, up till about 1970. Most notably, for instance, Richard John Newhouse wrote a book, In Defense of People, Ecology and the Seduction of Radicalism. The project of greening America is obscene so long as vast areas of the world are parched by war and famine. Okay. Alan Chase, old line leftist. The greatest peace movement ever created in America, a coalition of young people powerful enough to have driven Lyndon Johnson out of public life in 1968, now committed Harry Carey on national television in the name of the more revival of Malthusianism. But these were voices in the wind. They were overwhelmed. The gate receipts were to be found among environmentalism. And the left, embraced Malthusianism full bore and is, of course, the main political vehicle for it today, though not exclusive. Now, of course, one of the first campaigns after DBT was against nuclear power. Okay. The left had actually supported nuclear power in the 50s and 60s. No more. After 1970, it was militantly against it, and environmentalists adopted a drive against it. They turned against it precisely at the point when it became economical. During the 60s, it was frequently used as kind of a stalking horse for arguing against coal. Why are we building these coal-fired power plants? Someday we'll have nuclear power. As soon as you actually could have nuclear power, they said no nuclear power. But look at this. Nuclear power is, in a certain sense, one of the ultimate subversive facts underlying the argument of the need for limits, because of the huge amounts of energy it makes available. Okay, that is, here's energy in terawatt years that are available from various resources. And here I turned it into money. The UN, the world government crowd, the socialists, they frequently talk about different things on Earth as the common heritage of mankind. Well, there's a certain utility in that viewpoint with regard to energy resources, because the energy resources available to mankind are, in a certain sense, the common heritage of mankind. So what's your cut of your common heritage? If we value these energies at a rate of 7 cents per kilowatt hour and divide it by the world population, you get your share. Okay, your share of the world's oil reserves, that is your share and that of your posterity, is $18,000. Your share of the world's coal is $72,000. Natural gas, $18,000. Nuclear fission without reprocessing, $62,000. Nuclear fission with uranium with reprocessing, $4.5 million. Nuclear fission using thorium fuel, $18 million. So here, you give up nuclear power, you're out $22 million. Okay. Now this, by the way, all this is technology that is actually practical today. Thorium reactors are possible today. That's not, future. Okay. And then if we talk about things that could be possible, we get to nuclear fusion, it's $9 trillion. Okay. But per capita. Okay. So that's why they wanted to stop nuclear power. Now, so now we get to population control. Okay. So they had all this agitation, population control, linking it to Cold War objectives. Look, in the 1950s and 60s, you want to sell anything in this country to the government, you say it's the way to fight the communists, whether you're selling moonshots or education funding, whatever. Okay, it's to stop communism. So population control was for stopping communism. Now, there's the usual, there's the Population Council, which is the Rockefeller and the Osborns, International Planned Parenthood Fund, which is the heirs of Margaret Sanger, Ehrlich, Moore and his people, and this very important group called the Draper Fund Population Crisis Committee, which included a very interesting cast. Draper, Robert McNamara, George Bull, Ambassador Ellsworth Bunker, Averell Harriman, General William Westmoreland, General Maxwell Taylor, Ambassador Marshall Green, ambassador to Indonesia, Ellsworth Bunker was ambassador to Vietnam, and Robert Comer, who was head of the pacification program in Vietnam. Wow. These people were I just won't even go there. Now, then it also, in the Nixon administration, there was it was adopted as part of U.S. strategic doctrine under a document NSSM 200, which I quote extensively in the book, was in 1974. It was classified. It was leaked in around 1989, so it's now public. So here's a few quotes from it. The political consequences of the current population factors in the least developed countries are damaging to the internal stability and the international relations of countries in whose advancement the U.S. is interested, thus creating political or even national security problems for the U.S. Adverse socioeconomic conditions generated by these and related factors may lead to revolutionary actions. And he also says we must take care that our activities should not give the appearance to the LDCs of an industrial country policy directed against the LDCs. A growing number of experts believe the population situation is already more serious and less amenable to solution through voluntary measures. Okay, the population contributes to balance of payments problems. They're not paying us back. They're spending their money on children. There is also established precedent for linking population foreign aid to appraisal of population programs. But you must not make it look like coercion. Okay, the guy who was put in charge of the program. Okay, in 1966, Congress passed a law linking U.S. foreign aid to the imposition of population control programs on third world countries and setting quotas. And the person put in charge of all this was a guy named Reimart Thorolf Ravenholt, that's him, with Draper. And the way he did this was very smart. He subcontracted all the money to the population control lobby organizations like Planned Parenthood and the Population Council, which they greatly appreciated because it multiplied their budgets about 100-fold. Previously, they were dealing with private money, foundation money, budgets of millions of dollars. Now they had hundreds of millions of dollars. And in fact, within just a very few years, population control became over 70% of USAID money. That is, all this money that previously gone to actual medical care programs in the third world was shifted over into population control programs. And a lot of that went to these organizations, and the part of it that went to the actual third worlders was in a certain way worse. Because, for example, what happened in Africa was using this hard American money, they hired out from under the governments there all their best medical personnel, so that in places like Kenya and these other places, the hospitals, all the medical personnel that were competent were hired away from doing actual medicine into population control programs, and a lot of those that were incompetent too, which we'll get to. But it did a total wrecking job on healthcare in much of the third world, in addition to the actual damage that it did. One of the first victims is India, and one of the most famous, when the Indira Gandhi government capitulated to this pressure and implemented forced sterilization programs involving the forcible sterilization of ultimately tens of millions of people. But this was also done in Indonesia and across Africa and many other countries. Here's Peru. And by the way, in almost every place where this is implemented, okay, the racist criteria come into play, because the people in charge generally have a local race that they hate. Like in India, you had the High Brahmin Gandhi government doing most of the dirty work for the untouchables. In Peru, you have the Hispaniards, the actual Spanish-descended people, doing it to the Andean people. In Sri Lanka, you had the Ceylon, you had the Sinhalese doing it to the Tamils, which inspired a rebellion which lasted decades. In Africa, it's Tribe A doing it to Tribe B, who they despise. And this is a characteristic. Here are the